Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Guess who is finally here? It's Bentley, and he's the sweetest little guy, and I'm so sorry it took me so long for an update, but I will tell you why here in just a second. But first of all, you guys, just look at this bundle of sweetness. Oh my gosh. So he was born November 28th, and I was 39 weeks and 2 days pregnant. And that night I was having contractions. I had been having contractions for probably a good 2 weeks. Like, there were days where I really thought like that was going to be the day. But I had started to just kind of like ignore them at that point because I just didn't believe that it was real anymore, because they would like start up and then they'd go away. So that night I was having contractions. I took a bath just to kind of calm everything down. And the night before and that night I also took a sleeping pill because I was not getting sleep like whatsoever at all. And I figured, you know, I need to get some sleep if I'm gonna be able to like have a baby. So I was just completely exhausted. And so I took that sleeping pill for the second night in a row. I woke up at 2 a.m. on Saturday morning, and I had just kind of barely rolled over in bed, and I felt like a small gush of fluid, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think my water just broke. So I got up, I like ran to the bathroom because I thought like there would be like way more fluid coming out. So I went to the bathroom, and I'm just like in this state of like, oh my gosh, like what do I do? My water didn't break with either one of my other two boys. So I was like, okay, oh my gosh. And then I was like, oh crap, because I remembered that when my water broke with both of the boys, like when I was in labor in the hospital already, like the doctor broke my water, I think both times. But I remember that is when the contractions started getting super serious and like more painful and things like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, and this is my third baby, and I know he's gonna come fast, because, you know, with my second, I was already at a 6 before I got to the hospital. Like, didn't even think it was the real thing. So I started freaking out a little bit. Thank God I had my hospital bag packed and everything like that. So I put on like a giant pad, and I went and I woke up my husband. I was like, babe, I think my water just broke. And he's like, what? Like, he's like half asleep, you know? And then I texted my mom because I needed her to come over and just like be at our house for the little boys because they were sleeping, obviously. And so I said, I think my water just broke, which I'm like, it sounds silly to say I think, but it was such like a small gush. And I want to tell you this because if you're ever like questioning, or if any, you know, pregnant woman is ever questioning whether her water broke, you need to go in and get checked. Because if your water did break and then you wait for hours or even like a day or all of that, like you're putting yourself and your baby at risk for infection, or, you know, having a baby at home or in the car. So that is totally what I wanted to avoid. And, you know, I thought, you know, if this is a false alarm, then so be it. But I need to know, and I don't want to wait, because I wasn't really having contractions. I didn't think I was having contractions. I wasn't in pain. I started just having like some of that like menstrual cramp feeling. So I thought, okay, we got to get to the hospital like right now. So we go to the hospital, my mom gets there, and you know, it's all calm and chill. Like, I'm not really in any sort of pain or anything. And then we get checked in, and they're getting everything set up. They're monitoring my contractions. They're like, do you feel that? And like, they saw one on the monitor. I'm like, no. And so they said, well, the doctor wants them to hurt more, and before we'll give you an epidural. And I was like, okay. So I was just waiting. And then as soon as I started feeling them, I immediately was like, okay, like they're starting, you know, it's starting to hurt. Cause like I did not want to progress so fast that I couldn't get an epidural. Like that was my number one goal, was to get my epidural in time. So I ended up, and I don't know when everything happened, okay? Because this story is about to get really real. So as they're getting everything set up, they've got me on the monitor, they're setting up the baby warmer, they're getting everything ready for labor. Of course, they did my COVID test, which the COVID test, by the way, felt really, really weird. Like it felt almost like when you get like chlorine up your nose, really bad. And it like, my eyes watered so bad. And at that point, my husband went down to grab our stuff because they had determined like I'm definitely in labor. It was my water that broke. And so he went down to get all of our bags and everything. And the nurse, after a little bit, poked her head in and said, "You are gonna hate me." And I was like, "What?" And she said, "You're COVID positive." And I was like in disbelief, in like total shock, because I really was not having symptoms other than like 39-week pregnant symptoms of like being super tired, like exhausted for like a week before. And I was having headaches, but I thought, that's probably due to like lack of sleep because I wasn't sleeping well at all. The only thing that I will say that made me think, what the heck, was that night before when I went to take a bath. I like felt like I had like diminished smell. And I was like, okay, that's weird. And then I'm like, okay, but there's no way, like surely I don't have COVID. Like I would have like way more symptoms. Oh, and I was congested for like one day, and then that went away too. So she said, "You're COVID positive." And like, I feel like everything stopped. Like my world just like stopped for a minute. And like the things that come in your brain, like, oh my gosh, like, okay, so I'm about to have a baby. I have COVID. I just had everyone at my house for Thanksgiving. I had no idea I was sick. My husband, like my kids, like I've been kissing them, like all the things, you guys, like all the things in my head, like what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do going forward? Oh my gosh, what does this mean for this? Like all these things. And like Bentley's not even here yet. And okay, so I was actually on the phone with my husband, like giving him, directions on like how to get out to the car and everything when she popped her head in. And I was like, oh my gosh, babe, I have COVID. And he's like, what? He's like, that can't be right. There's no way. Tell him to retest you. Which of course they didn't do. But so he comes back in. The mood shifted, you guys. Like it was suddenly, we're all in a hurry. The nurse came in and I had like one of those like face masks on that was just like the cotton material or whatever. Okay. My cute little cheetah mask, which I love to wear. Well, didn't get to wear that. She said, okay, I need you to take that mask off because that is a level 1 mask and you need to put this mask on. Gave me one of the blue like hospital masks because this is a level 2. So it's like, okay. So that like, protected them a little bit more, with having a better mask on me. So swapped mask. They're moving me to another room. They're moving me like away from all of the other moms and babies. They're moving me down to like another wing of the unit. Like I was like on the COVID unit or wherever I was going. And just, they were like rushing around. They're gowning up, they're doing all the things, taking all the precautions, and they're wheeling me down the hallway. And it was just like total silence the whole time. Like as me and my husband are like processing the fact that I have this unknown, like crazy virus, and we're about to bring a baby into the world. So 45 minutes goes by and we're just like not even speaking because we don't even know, like there's no words. So anyway, everything got all set up. We're processing. We're like, okay, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. You know, my husband told me later, like, I was so scared. Like, I didn't even know, like, if you were gonna like make it through delivery. Like, who knows like what this is gonna be like, you know? Which was, you know, just, it was terrifying to hear. Okay. So I'll have more on COVID later, and how everything went down. I'll probably do a separate video on that, of how we handled everything once we went home and how everything went down and who got it and who didn't and what happened. So that'll be a separate video. So COVID aside, this baby is a complete miracle that he is even here, that he's even with us today. So everything from my water breaking to let me know to go to the hospital, to getting there, to telling the nurses, I think this is gonna go fast. I was at a 6 with my second baby by the time I got to the hospital, and I didn't even know, like, I was really, really in labor, all of that. So that told them, okay, we need to call the doctor. We need to get this going. We need to do this. Okay. So, the anesthesiologist was coming in because I was like, okay, y'all get my IV going, get my full bag of fluids in me, because you have to have that bag of fluids before you can get your epidural, ladies. So if you want one, make sure you let them know so you can get your fluids going. Okay. Okay. So, the anesthesiologist came in and he, you know, was starting my epidural, and I suddenly got super like nauseous and lightheaded and whoa, like crazy town. And I was like, I don't feel good. Like, I felt like I was gonna pass out. And so they gave me a shot of epinephrine to get my heart, or to get my blood pressure back up, because my blood pressure dropped to like 70/40 or something real crazy. And my husband was like probably freaking out at that point. So they got my blood pressure back up. I got my epidural. Everything was great. And I was so glad when I got my epidural too, because I didn't get to the point with my other two where I was in so much pain that I was just, you know, crying and screaming and all that. Like, I did not want that this time. I was like, I want to get my epidural, you know, right when it starts, you know, getting serious with the contractions and stuff. So it was perfect timing for the epidural, thank God. So I was like, cool, okay, let's do this. My water had broken at home, but not a lot. Remember, there was not a lot of fluid that came out. So they, you know, were checking me. I don't know like the exact time and like how everything went down, because you guys, I was like processing a lot and it was really crazy, but I feel like it went fast. I will say that the epidural definitely slowed down my progress a little bit, which is completely normal. But nonetheless, it took the edge off. So they had started some Pitocin to get the contractions going a little bit again, because the epidural kind of slowed everything down. I remember before I got my epidural, there were 2 nurses in the room, and one nurse was like quizzing the other nurse. Okay, like, she said, what do we do before we start Pitocin? And I was like, give the patient an epidural. And they both started laughing, but like, I didn't want to like feel like a ton of pain. So anyway, so I got my epidural, and then I had the Pitocin going and got everything moving again and progressing. And there was really no signs at all that anything was wrong with the baby, or that anything was going to impact delivery in any way, until like we were at the moment. So in between that time, as I was progressing, I remember the nurse came in and she said, oh, you have what we call a 4-bag. So what that means is that like my water had broken a little bit, but it, like, the way his position was, it resealed, and so it wasn't completely broken yet. So she was like, oh, I can't get it, because she was checking me, and that's when she realized. And she's like trying to break it the rest of the way, but she couldn't get it. And so the doctor was on the unit. So the doctor came in, and she was going to use one of those little, I don't know what it's called, the little hook thing to like break your water, which is what they did with my other 2. And when she went in to check, she's like, oh, you're at a 7. Then she broke the water like on accident, like just when she was checking me. Like that's how close it was to being completely broken. And so she's like, oh, I got it. She didn't even have to use the little hook thing. And then all of a sudden I was like a 9, and she was like, okay. And so everybody left the room because they were like, okay, we're gonna go to the bathroom and get ready and do all that stuff because we're probably gonna be in here for a while. I was like, okay, cool. So I remember I started feeling like very soon after I felt pressure, and I did not feel pressure with either one of my other 2 babies with the epidural. I felt like literally nothing because the epidural was just like so good, which I was grateful. I was like, I don't feel anything, this is great. But I felt like before I didn't have control over like my body. Like they were like push, and I'm like, am I doing it? Like, I don't know. With this epidural, praise God that it was good enough for me to not feel pain, but not so strong that I couldn't feel pressure. Because had I not felt pressure, all of these things could have gone differently, okay? So I felt the pressure, and immediately I pushed my call button because I'm like, oh my gosh, well, they have to put literally head to toe gear on to come in my room. And so I pushed my call button and I was like, I think I'm feeling pressure. Again, I had never felt pressure before, but I was like, if this is what this feels like, then everybody needs to get in here, like right away. Stat, let's go. So I knew the doctor hadn't gone very far because she knew that I was going to progress quickly just because of, you know, what I had told the nurses before and everything. So they all come in and they're like, oh, yep, it's time. So I start pushing, and I like was feeling so good. Like it felt like I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get this baby out in 3 pushes. I was so excited because with my first, I pushed for 2 hours and then still like tore really badly. That's a whole other story. It took months, almost a year to recover completely from that tear. Because I think there was like a nerve or something when they sewed it up. With my second, I tore a little bit and I pushed for maybe like 45 minutes to an hour. This one, I was like, okay, this is awesome. I felt like he was coming out. They're like, good, 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 good. You're doing great. And by the 3rd push, I felt like, okay, something's wrong let wasn't working anymore. Like the pushes were not effective. He was like stuck. Hi buddy. Hey, sweetheart. So come to find out, she said, oh, his position, he is sunny side up. So basically it makes it a lot harder for the baby to come out because of that positioning. And then I didn't know this at the moment, but like everyone's faces looked super worried, and I'm like, what's going on? And baby's heart rate was dropping literally down to nothing. And so the doctor very like calmly but sternly said, okay, we have to get this baby out right now. I'm going to use the vacuum and I'm going to cut you. And I'm like, no. Like my first thought because I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know his heart rate was dropping. My first thought was like, no, like I wanted this baby to just come on out and not have all that like trauma for postpartum recovery. But I was like, okay. And you know, my husband was really great. He's like, it's gonna be okay, babe, which he did kind of know what was going on because he could see the baby on the monitor. And so he was really encouraging. And so I said, okay. And so she cut me. Thank Jesus for the epidural. Thank you, God. She cut me and she started using the vacuum along with my pushes. I'm sure they stopped the Pitocin by then just to take the pressure off the baby and the stress. So I was pushing, she used the vacuum. The vacuum popped off his head. So with the next contraction, she's like, okay, we're gonna do this again. So she got the vacuum back on, push, and she's using the vacuum to try to like pull him out while I'm pushing. It popped off the second time. So what I didn't know at the time and I'm glad I didn't because I probably would have been freaking out, is that after the vacuum pops off 3 times, it's like straight to an emergency C-section. Thank God that with that 3rd push with the vacuum, he came out. And he was crying right away. His color was good and everything was great. But what I found out was that he had his cord wrapped around his neck 3 times and it was tied in a knot, which just absolutely blows my mind, because that's why like his heart rate was dropping, because once that knot got squeezed completely tight, then that cut off his like oxygen supply. Plus it was wrapped around his neck 3 times. So, I mean, the nurse told us, you know, we call these angel babies. Okay, I got cut off. She said we call these angel babies because the fact that the cord was wrapped around his neck even once, but regardless 3 times, plus it was tied in a knot. It's a miracle that he's alive and with us. And also, had he not come out on that 3rd push with the vacuum, I would have had an episiotomy and a C-section, and that healing would have been absolutely brutal, especially with the way things went down once I got home with COVID. So I guess I'm gonna go ahead and I'll tell you kind of the rest of the story of how everything went down, like the short version. And if you have questions, please let me know in the comments, and I will make another video. If you would like me to, let me know about how everything went down and like more details. So number 1, like with having COVID, thank God that at my hospital, they let the baby stay in the room with me. So I just had to wear a mask like while breastfeeding and everything like that. So did that. Baby was in the room the whole time. My husband couldn't leave the room or else he wouldn't be able to come back. So he stayed in the room the whole time. And then they did everything in the room. So like from newborn screening tests to hearing tests to circumcision, everything was done in the room. They never took him out of the room for any reason because of COVID. So everything was great. Everything checked out great, which was like a huge blessing. And they tested him for COVID like right away after he was born. Of course, that was negative. And they said they were going to test him again before we left, and then they didn't actually end up doing that. And okay, so we go home and the boys met their baby brother for the first time, which was absolutely the sweetest thing that I have ever seen. It was just like so cute. And if you haven't seen that video, I'm going to link it so that you can see it. It's like adorable. So they come home, or we all come home. That night, my 5-year-old Blake had a fever, and he said he had a headache and he had a fever, and his nose like suddenly was congested. Oh, hi, babe. This is Blake. So come say hi. Hi. I was just talking about you in my video.
I heard you.
You heard me saying your name?
We had so much fun, Mama. We slided on that thing.
I saw you. I was peeking out the window. They just got back in from playing in the snow with Daddy. Your cheeks are so red.
Malcolm had that cheek red too.
Oh my gosh. Did you guys have a blast?
Yeah. This is a cutie little baby.
He loves his baby. He really does. So I was talking about that night when we came home with the baby.
Yeah.
And how Mommy had the virus, and then you had a fever that night.
Uh-huh.
And then so you had what? You had a headache. Dude. Okay, so you had a headache, right? And then you had a fever, and your nose was like suddenly stopped up. So I gave him ibuprofen one time, and he ended up sleeping through the night. Everything was fine, and literally that was that. Like, had I not been positive for COVID, I would have never gotten him tested, honestly.
Love you guys.
This is the sweetest kid you've ever seen in your life. Obviously, he's doing fine now. So, literally, that was the only, the only symptoms that he had. And it lasted for one night. So, and then Beckham was not really having any, like, no fevers, no nothing, maybe a stuffy nose a little bit for a couple days. Oh, look, you're coming in right on cue. I'm talking about you. Come here. What's wrong? Okay, so here's Beck. He just got back in from playing in the snow too. And he wasn't having really any symptoms at the time. Just maybe like his eyes were really watery and he had like a runny nose for a couple days, but nothing really crazy. And he ended up testing negative. Blake tested positive, Beckham tested negative, which I thought was really interesting. And I will say that I wonder if the antibodies, if the antibodies from breast milk have anything to do with it, because he does nurse like 1 or 2 times a day, and he tested negative, and he was the only one in our house that tested negative. Okay, so he tested negative, Blake tested positive, husband tested positive, and my mom tested positive. And then a couple weeks later, baby tested positive. So what we ended up doing at first was husband quarantined upstairs. I was on the main floor with the baby and like the kiddos during the day. And then the boys slept in their room together at night. And then my mom quarantined herself in my basement. Then we found out like, oh, okay, so once we found out that everybody had the same thing, that it wasn't like one person had the flu and one person had COVID, then we were able to quarantine together. So the adults wore masks and the kids did not wear masks, but we just tried to do our very best. We did not like make the kids stay 6 feet away from us. Like, how can you do that? And really, how can you, the exposure had already happened, you know what I mean, to be honest. The boys had already, you know, been kissing their baby brother and everything. So it was just like, it is what it is. We were just, I was praying so much for that, like 2 weeks of just that everyone would be okay. You're hugging baby, I know. So we quarantined together, thank God, because the first week postpartum was the hardest week probably of my life, because I was not only recovering from COVID, I was also recovering from delivery with an episiotomy, with a newborn, with no help, getting no sleep, sleeping on the couch, taking care of the kids, all 3 of them by myself during the day. I was taking care of all 3 kids by myself during the day. I was exhausted, you guys. Okay, so we were quarantining together and I was so relieved because I had been doing everything by myself. I was exhausted beyond belief. And so then my mom was able to help, my husband was able to help, but they still like weren't feeling their best. They were still kind of having fevers and different symptoms. And so, you know, I kind of felt like I was still taking care of everyone in a way, because, you know, I was trying to hold it together for everybody. You know, I wanted them to get better fast. So I was trying to make sure that they were getting their rest too. So anyway, a long story short, everything ended up being okay. Baby was okay. All that he had was, all baby had was the one fever that never returned. Okay. So I got cut off again, sorry. So anyway, that is my whole story. I'm sorry if it was choppy and I'm sorry if I left anything out, but if you have any questions about how all of that went down and everything with COVID, please leave them in the comments below. And thank you so much for watching. And we're just so grateful that this little guy is here. He's absolutely incredible. And we're just super blessed. So let me know what questions you have in the comments below. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you in our next one.